I think the thing that most people tend to focus on is that number, right? Is like, it's almost like this weird thing where it's like, becomes almost like a worth type thing for some people on this particular space. So how do you balance that? So I mean, you've got, 25,000 people now. Is that a number that, like, do you feel validated by that number? Do you feel like that number is insignificant? It's significant. It needs to be more. It doesn't matter to me. Where are you with that particular number? What does that number mean to you?
So the number, what it means for me, what it may mean for somebody else is different, right? So for me, Instagram career to be a blogger, like it wasn't even like that's my goal down the line. Like, it didn't exist. Like I did this for me, and I did it because I wanted to. I had friends who had different hobbies, people who liked, were in college, people like play video games, people like to do this. Like I was working on building a craft, and I also think that like I was a heavy consumer of this industry.
Out of the space, right? So say someone's got, say they're at like 1,000 or 6,000 followers or something, right? Would this approach still work for them? You think the same approach, but just maybe having a different amount that you charge? Would that be like the only difference, you think?
I mean, here's the thing. If you operate your platforms like a business, then people will treat you like a business.
All right, cool. Hey, Sabrina, welcome to the pod. Thank you for taking the time to get on. I really appreciate it. You're a lifestyle blogger. I guess officially an influencer. I mean, I think you've got the numbers to be able to say that pretty confidently. And I really appreciate you taking the time to get on and kind of hopefully sharing some tips, some secrets with us, and kind of talking to us about your journey.
Sure. Yeah. Happy to be here. Thanks for thinking of me.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. So, you've got this really curated blog, and you've got this really awesome Instagram page, and I'm sure you've got other social media channels too, right? Like I'm sure you're probably doing stuff on Pinterest, probably stuff on Facebook, right? Are you doing anything on TikTok?
Yeah. I actually just recently, like last week or maybe the week before, hit 100,000 followers on TikTok.
Oh
Um,
shit!
it's been really fun. I felt like I got in pretty late, but it was still earlier compared to everything that's happening now. So I started
Yeah.
finding out, I started kind of like really studying the platform in like October, November of last year. And then I think my
Okay.
first official video was like December 30th of
Yeah.
2019. So like
Oh
right
wow.
at the end of the year. But I just saw a lot of growth. It was cool because I did something on TikTok that I haven't intentionally done on any of my other platforms,
Yeah.
and that was like niche down. So by trade, I'm a lifestyle blogger. I cover 9 topics on my blog, and I cover them evenly.
Okay.
So my blog kind of started back when I was in college, and as I kind of grew up, my blog grew with me, and luckily my audience has also grown with me. So writing is a passion of mine, and it's a craft. And so while in an age where there's so much saturation, people are migrating to specific accounts and are finding authority in those places. So
Yeah.
they go to
Yeah.
Instagram, and like, you can look at like a cooking, influencer and say,
Yeah.
okay, I really like what they're doing, I'm going to follow that person. But when you stumble across somebody who has a little bit of a lot of things, you're just like, they say you have like 8 seconds before you decide if you're going to follow an account or not.
Okay.
The minute you see
Wait,
that,
how
you're
do
just
you know that? Like, what was it, like a study that came up with that, or is it like a?
stats. I do a lot of research. I do some like business work in the influencer space on the other side of it. I do some influencer consulting work, and so I'm really tuned into all of like the metrics and numbers that come out of it. But yeah, so as a lifestyle blogger, it's harder. It's harder to grow with covering so many different topics, but the depth of how connected your readers are to like different parts of your life and like different
Yeah.
things it feels like it's you're more connected to a smaller group of people, and that's really what I've built my brand on. But interestingly enough, I decided with TikTok that I want to do something completely different.
Yeah.
So it's a new platform, and I
And
decided
it's a
that
more creative platform. Like my wife just discovered it too, and she's like, I fucking love it. She's like, this is a
yeah, you
lot
get,
of
and
fun.
you downloaded it kind of as like like wonder what this is, and then you get
Yeah.
sucked in. And
Okay.
I decided to niche down on TikTok, and I was going to specifically talk about beauty. And so my account is in within the Simply brand. It's Simply Beauty Hacks, and it's reach. I think we're growing at like between 500 to 1,000 followers a day,
Oh,
which is just incremental growth that that you can't see on a more established platform like Instagram, because
yeah,
people have fatigue, right? People, you scroll through your feed and you're like, why am I following this person? Who is this person? And you're
right,
unfollowing people
right.
more often than you're following them on a
Yeah.
platform like Instagram that's been established. But TikTok in 2020 is
I think
instant.
people are still searching. Yeah, I think you're right. I think people might still be looking for like who it is that they want to follow. I think it's still like in that early phase where you like I think you were kind of mentioned it earlier, right? So yeah, I don't think the fatigue is set in yet on TikTok at all. I think people are like, oh, who else is doing cool stuff? Who else is
Harder
doing
to
cool stuff?
do away from a fatigue. I think you're still looking at like TikTok
Yeah.
2020, it's Instagram 2012. Like
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
still a
Yeah, that's
little
a
bit
good way of putting it.
fun time to get in as a creator.
No, fair enough. And so I didn't think we'd talk this much about TikTok, but yeah, I guess kind of let's get into it. So how often are you posting on TikTok right now?
I post 2 to 3 videos a day.
Oh shit. Okay, so that's quite a bit. Okay. And then how does it work on TikTok? Do you have like do you have like tags or something? Or like how do you like actually get your videos out for people to see?
What I've found is niching is helpful. So if you kind of find a niche that you're specifically in, let's say it's cooking videos and you're doing cooking videos, and you find you don't want to put more than like 2 to 4 hashtags on any videos on TikTok. And so once you kind of figure out like, hey, I had a really good video and I built authority with comments and likes and shares on
Yeah.
videos in certain categories, I'm going to continue to produce videos in those categories.
Yeah.
The algorithm will kind of push you forward, because even as TikTok grows, you know how you open up your Instagram page, you're
Yeah.
on your feed, you're not on the explore tab.
Right.
TikTok
Right.
is the opposite. So the For You page is like your explore tab, and that's what people are defaulted to when they open up. So even if you're following
Uh,
a bunch of people, you're
yeah.
still likely only going to see your videos be successful if you fall into a good place on the For You tab.
Okay, fair enough. And I think I'm sure you've found pathways to monetization, obviously through the blog and through Instagram. Do you see a pathway to monetization right now on TikTok the way it currently is, or do you see yourself just kind of growing a following and then hopefully making money later on down the
No, I've already signed 3 deals in this last quarter for TikTok,
line? Okay,
and we're
very cool.
matching numbers on Instagram for
Uh,
traffic. And it's mostly because brands are curious and they want to explore in the platform, they want to play in the platform.
Yeah,
And I think that there's a bunch of maybe like more new creators and people who don't really know what they're doing, who may get offers from brands that are really exciting. And then there's people who are more seasoned like me, that when I have somebody reach out to me, there is like a standard email template that explains
yeah,
my
yeah.
it, there's my rate sheet, there's my demographic information,
Does that
there's
vary? Does your rate sheet vary based on the brand and platform?
no. I'm at a point in my career where my rates are standard across the
You're not
board,
doing like post
and
for
everyone
pics
gets the
anymore.
same.
Are you or like product for pics? Are you past that? Have you
Yeah,
jumped?
yeah, we're beyond that. And I do still, so in my kind of standard response, it does say like, you know, thanks for reaching out. Here's what you want to, here's what you should know about me. Here's who I am. I'm attaching a media kit so you can get to know more about me.
Yeah.
And then it asks what their budget is for a collaboration. And then it says like kind of what popular packages are, what people are seeing success in. And then it does say like for gifting opportunities, like here are the brands that I would recommend. And that paragraph will either make it or not make it into the email if I do or do not want to accept products. So obviously with TikTok being a beauty account, I'm getting a lot of big beauty brands that want to send me product in hopes that I send it out. So my gifting paragraph is very specific that anything that does not pay my media rate, there's no guarantee of promotion. It is completely at will. I oftentimes do post, but there is absolutely no guarantee. It's for editorial consideration, and just want to be like very clear and make sure that they know that. But yeah, I get brands sending me product. I mean, my like UPS and FedEx drivers think I'm crazy. Like they legitimately think I have a problem because it's
Yeah.
4 or 5 packages a
I mean,
day.
it's
Like,
that's a good problem to have, right? And then at some point, I think you get like like a USPS locker, and you kind of get it all sent over there, and then for like
yeah.
safety reasons later on, I guess. But yeah, that's a really good problem to have. So it's pretty cool that you've become that you've kind of taken it to the point where it's no longer, it doesn't sound like a hobby. I mean, this is a real thing. I mean, you got real contracts here that you're making people sign. When did you get to that point when you were like, all right, yeah, this is legitimate. You got to sign this contract. These are my rates. When did you kind of get to that from like the product for pick phase to sort of this phase? When did that happen?
So I think it's important to note that I started blogging a really long time ago. So I started blogging in 2009. So before this was a career option, I was doing this because it was a hobby and because I loved it. And granted, my content has changed and evolved and so much. Like I cringe looking back at like the old stuff, but like I feel like that's a good thing. Like if
Are
you're
you
not
are you
cringing.
removing the old stuff or do you still leave it there?
It depends. Right now, my site is going through a big overhaul with like SEO things. So I'm trying to clean up the site in terms of stuff that like isn't SEO optimized.
Yeah,
And most of those old posts are just like
yeah,
a
yeah.
bunch of fashion pictures. So they're not really optimized.
Hate it,
So
yeah.
yes, but for different reasons. But I think it's important, right? Like you go back and if you're not cringing 3 years from now at the stuff you were posting, then like you're not growing fast enough.
Yeah, 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 for sure,
Uh,
for sure.
so I've been doing this a really long time and I started filing taxes. I think my first year filing taxes was 2005. So it's been about 5 years, maybe
Wait,
2004.
you mean 2015 or
Sorry,
2000?
2015.
Okay.
Sorry, but I
So
don't think that's
you're
right.
filing taxes in 2005. Oh, fuck,
No, no,
you're
no,
in high
sorry,
school. That's
let me go
it.
back. So my fiscal year was 2015. So in 2014 was the first year that I like got incorporated. I like got my S corp. I like got my tax ID, like bank accounts, like did all of that stuff. So it's been about 6 years. And then of course, like every quarter, you should be raising your rates, even if it's nominally, right? Like you should be raising your rates $25 or $50 or however, kind of dependent on you're not paying somebody for the hour long it took them to shoot a picture. You're paying for their 9 years of expertise that they took to build, craft, create, grow, and build an audience that knows, likes, and trusts them, right? Like that's
Right,
what you're.
right, right. Yeah, you kind of said it early on. I mean, you're becoming an authority in a space, and I guess that should be valued. And in the beginning, like let's be honest, no one's a fucking authority in anything. But again, when you put in the time, I mean, that's kind of how this works, right? So let's actually kind of go back. So you started your blog in 2009. Were you in college at this point?
Yeah, I was a sophomore in college.
And what were you studying when you were in college?
So I was an advertising major. So I worked through the journalism school, and I had a bunch of other like degrees and concentrations because I just wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do. So I like wanted to cover my base if I wanted to be pre-law. I studied abroad and just had a bunch of credits from like high school, and in college I studied Spanish, so I just had like a minor in Spanish. And then I got a certification in new media, which is kind of the intersection of like design and technology. So it's crazy enough. The WordPress site that I built for my junior year project is the site that I run now.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, and WordPress is still, I mean, it's sort of the foundation for a lot of websites today. So, so you start in 2009. So while you're in, that was a part of a project in school to start up your own website, your own blog?
I was on Blogger, so I was already on it before because I started it my sophomore year, but I migrated it over to WordPress. I built the site in WordPress later, and then actually I kept my site on Blogger because I just didn't want to deal with WordPress until like maybe like 1 to 2 years after graduation, and then I migrated everything back over to that original site.
Okay, got it. And so you start off blogging, and then, and I'm sure the content was probably things you were just interested in, right? So today you said you have like 8 curated things that you're like evenly talking about, right? I guess were these 8 things still the things that you were talking about early on in 2009, or was it totally different?
It was very much fashion focused. So back in 2009, first of all, blogging was like not even a thing. We had migrated out of like the Zanga live journal phase, which was like
Yeah,
a
yeah,
personal diary,
yeah.
into a void of like professional websites. And so blogging kind of came out of like, it was a virtual diary. So fashion bloggers were the only ones who were really doing anything. And they weren't talking about, it was some were, but they weren't really talking about like, hey, this is a website authority on like the new spring launches or like this thing. It was like personal style, so it was almost like a personal style diary. So people were sharing. I mean, you would do like 8 to 12 pictures of every outfit in different angles, and you would post all of them, which seems insane now because now I have 1 or 2 pictures, max like 5 in
Yeah.
any given blog post, because that's just not how people read, right? You were thinking people weren't reading on their phones at that time, right? Like it was they weren't reading on tablets, and now like 65% of my traffic comes from mobile, which is the greater majority. So my posting to be optimized for that, site speed matters more now. Like all of these things that just didn't really exist back then.
Right, right. Yeah, I think but I think it's that's a good point too. I mean, I think that generally, I think you just fucking start and then you iterate and you optimize as the times change and as you become more informed. I think it goes back again to being the authority. You know what I mean? The authority is the optimized person in the space. You know what I mean? So no, it makes sense too. And so you start doing your blog in 2009. You say your first year of filing taxes is in 2014, 2015, right around that year. So during those 4 years, or actually the 5 or 6 years that you're doing this, what's kind of leading you to kind of put your content out there if you aren't already saying I'm going to go file taxes right now? So like, what kind of work are you putting in those 5 or 6 years before you start kind of turning the corner?
Well, this wasn't, you have to like remember that like this wasn't a job opportunity. There was no career to be a blogger. Like it wasn't even like that's my goal down the line. Like it didn't exist. Like I did this for me. And I did it because I wanted to. I had friends who had different hobbies, people who liked, were in college, people like play video games, people like to do this. Like I was working on building a craft. And I also think that like I was a heavy consumer of this industry, right? So like I loved reading blogs. My favorite, I would go and check like, people were writing new blog posts 7 days a week. And so I would go and like check in on my favorite bloggers. I would go and
Yeah,
read their
yeah,
sites. And it was, and people were doing that back then, right? So like it was a fun, being a consumer was such a fun opportunity for me that I felt like after so much consumption, like it was my job to like go back and like deliver my voice in a space. Also, like there were very few young people, there were very few people of color, there were very few especially like South Asian people doing this. And I loved, finding outfit trends from certain people, but like I didn't know what that would look like on my body. Like I had no idea what those makeup products would look like on my skin tone. So it was just kind of my voice in a space that was new and exciting.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, fair enough. And so then when does that start turning into the idea that this is like, so now it's not only is it just like a passion project for me, now this is like a potential career. What does a brand reach out to you? Do you reach out to a brand kind of, or what's the process there for initial monetization on the
Um,
blog?
so in the beginning, I do outreach now, although not as much as I should be. I also think that like I finally fell into like a slew of like, okay, I'm ready to pitch myself. Like I'm doing so good. I had like spreadsheets, and then COVID happened, and you're kind of like, this is a
Yeah,
weird time
that's
to
mostly
think
that.
yourself. And so, um, I have worked full time for the majority of the time that I've been running my blog. So
What
for
were you
me,
doing, by the way?
so I've had a career in technology, and so I worked for Turner Broadcasting, which is now Warner Media, for about 5 years. I was at AT&T before that. I was at Twitter before that, and I work as a product manager for their streaming platform. So I did some work with TBS and TNT for March Madness Live, working on their mobile and tablet streaming products. And then I was the user experience product manager for TBS and TNT, the TV channel,
Okay.
on their digital platforms. And so that's kind of my background. But it was very easy having a full-time job to say, hey, I don't have time to do any outreach. I'm only going to do inbound opportunities. So for the longest time, that's all I did. And I think it wasn't until like 2014-ish, really, when I started to like really take it seriously. I think I got engaged in 2013, and it was in September of 2013 that I remember having this conversation with my then fiance, now husband, where I was like, I am putting so much time into this hobby. Like I've got to make a certain amount of money to like make this worth it. And
Yeah.
it was nothing. It was like $500 a month. Like I have to do something to make this worth my time.
Yeah.
And at that point, like I remember seeing like, oh my God, I had like 100 readers like in the month. Like it was like a
Yeah.
huge number for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like this month is my highest trafficked month ever. And we're looking at hitting like almost 100,000 like monthly page views, which is amazing for 30 days. Like
You've been tracking this. You've been tracking this data for a while. Like so, since even before you, or even before this was like a profitable venture for you, you've been always looking at like the number of like readers, or like how many like subscribers do I have to my blog. So that's been something that you've always kind of keyed in on.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you at a certain point, like you make decisions based on your gut, but you make decisions based on the data, right? Like I cover so many verticals. Like I need to know what posts people are spending the most time on. What is the data map of my site, right? People come in, they land on this page. Are they going to this page? Where are they ending up? How long are they staying? How many sessions are they doing per visit? How many pages per session? What's the site time like, right? How much time are they spending? What's my bounce rate? Like these
Yeah.
numbers are crucial. And so
Yes,
I,
but I guess early on, it's first like, okay, I got 100 people reading this blog, so it starts with like, I guess like the most basic, which is that number. So how do you start getting it so that it's like, okay, so one, people will want to reach out to you. So like, how did they find how did like a brand, or what was the first company that reached out to you and was like, hey, we want to pay you for being featured, or what was that process like? What was that conversation like? Do you remember?
yeah, I do. It was like a random jewelry brand, and they paid me like $50 to do a blog post and an Instagram post. I
Okay.
don't even think the company is still around, but I was like super excited. I was like, oh my God,
Yeah, yeah,
$50.
yeah.
Amazing.
For
Uh,
sure.
I mean, the fact that I wrote an entire blog post for them is like insane. Like, but I remember like the first brand, which conveniently enough, like didn't even pay me until a few years ago, but I built such a good reputation with was Vera Bradley.
Okay.
And they were like the biggest name, and they invited me and a few other bloggers to like a brunch in Atlanta. And so we went to that. And after that, I just built such a good rep, like repertoire with the kind of the person who was in charge of their influencer program. She was always like, whatever you want, anything you guys like, just send me a note and I'll ship it to you right away. And it's crazy because like they didn't pay us, but we had such a good, like, valuable relationship with this brand that like I posted hundreds of pictures of their stuff. I posted blog posts. Like I just loved the content. I loved the relationship, and I loved the product. And so it's crazy because I just did a sponsored post with them like last month, like
Did
in March.
you bring it up to them? Were you like, hey, I've been doing all this work for you guys for so long. I love the brand. And do you kind of make the pitch, and do you say to them like, hey, I think it's time that like, can we figure out a way to get this sort of so that it's a paid relationship? Is that an awkward conversation? Do they bring it up to you? How does that go?
Every brand is different. So in that sense, like it had been years since we had worked together. And so, and things just, over
Yeah.
time have just kind of changed. But in that sense, I was like, hey, I love the brand. I'd love to work with you. Here's my rate card. What does your budget look like for a partnership? But it's funny that you bring up something that's interesting. And that's that, and to be fair, I don't know the answer to it, but just being on the other side, like, it is much harder to get a brand to pay you once you've done work for them for free. So like the whole notion of like work for free and then people will pay you, like I have seen my peers be paid by brands that I have voluntarily reached out to, or they reached out to me, accepted free product, posted about that product, sent
Did they
them the
did they
analytics
have
behind
a
the
larger
product.
following base though? Do you think that may have been influence there? The same following base and
Like even less. Like it wasn't about that. It's just from a brand's perspective, if this person is, that this person is going to work for you for free, then like why would you pay them at all?
sure.
And like it becomes exceptionally more difficult to ask for payment once you have featured product for free, which is a catch 22 to like even all these brands sending me free product, because while it's great, and of course I'm going to talk about it if I love it and I can work it into a story angle, but I also know that the minute I do that, I am putting myself at a disservice to be paid for the content that I create.
So you did, but kind of the opposite happened with Vera Bradley, right? Where you were doing free content for like, I guess you said months or years almost, and then they end up agreeing to do a sponsorship post or whatever. So kind of the opposite was true there, right?
Well, yes, but that one was a little bit different, right? So like I had worked for them for in the sense of free product and like a good relationship for I mean, I would say for like 2 or 3 years. And then we didn't work together for like 4 years. And then at that point, when they came back to me, I said, hey, here's my rate sheet. Whereas
Okay.
like my numbers were not as high. Like they worked with me when I didn't have the numbers, right? They worked with me when my numbers were very small. So
Yeah.
I was more talking about like somebody reaching out to you now that I do charge and I do have this platform,
Got it.
and then to accept it later.
Fair enough. So today, I think you had talked a little bit about outreach and probably doing a little bit more, but COVID kind of threw you off. So I guess before COVID, what was like how much time did you spend on outreach? How much time did you spend just kind of fielding inbound messages from brands that wanted to work with you? Kind of how did that go? Was it more brands reaching out to you? Was it you reaching out to more brands? Kind of what's the balance there?
I mean, it's a numbers game, right? So like brands, you can't control who comes to your inbox, but if you want to make a livelihood and you want to have a good month and, meet your goals for the
Yeah.
month, every month you have your own personal goals. It is about reaching out to a number of brands. So I was at a point where I would reach out to 20 brands a week.
Okay.
And then, so in the month, you're reaching out to somewhere around like 80 brands a
Was there a
week.
template that worked? Was there a template that you found was like more like, did you like optimize your template to your outreach like methodology where you're like, all right, this language is not nearly translating as well, or like were there sort of like optimizations there?
For sure. I mean, you learn and you do it and you learn and you kind of get better from there. But I think for me in particular, what I found to be very beneficial is not just saying like, hey, here's who I am and here's why you should work with me, but here's what I have coming up in the pipeline. I am working on a spring cleaning post. I would love to work with
Okay.
list whatever the brands that I have,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
shortlisted on this page and say, hey, I'd love to work with you and here's the post that I want to do. And so like specific ideas, I would research every brand, look at their social channels, look at their website, what products are new for them, what products are they launching,
Yeah.
how can I build a story that ties in, that's good for my audience, that ties into their brand. So there, you can't templatize a good outreach because there just isn't one, right? There's a
Specific to,
format,
yeah, yeah,
intro, body, conclusion, but the
yeah.
middle of it that says, here's 3 ideas, have to be like, I know you're promoting XYZ. Here's how I can incorporate that. And here's how I can tell that story.
Okay, I think that's super helpful. I think that yeah, that's probably a good approach when you're contacting a brand. But what do you do when you're like, say you're a brand that, or say you're like just starting out in the space, right? So say someone's got, say they're at like 1,000 or 6,000 followers or something, right? Would this approach still work for them? Do you think the same approach, but just maybe having a different amount that you charge? Would that be like the only difference you think?
I mean, here's the thing. If you operate your platforms like a business, then people will treat you like a business. You can't, whether you can be committed with 1,000 followers and you can be committed with 6,000 followers or 600,000 followers. It's really about people are buying into your authority. Now, how much authority does someone with 1,000 followers have? I don't know. How much authority does someone with 6,000 followers have? I don't know. But at the core of it all, even being on the other side of it and like doing influencer consulting for brands, it's not about the follower number because brands are paying you for your exposure and they are paying for access to your audience, but they're also paying you for content, right? So one of the added benefits of doing influencer marketing versus just like a paid post on Facebook ads or Instagram ads is that you can actually own the rights to the content. And with COVID happening, what we're seeing is that a lot of brands are turning to influencers because they don't have access to their studio space. They don't have access to their photographers, their editors, their videographers. And so you have this one-stop shop that's significantly more affordable. Just paying your time for a model and a photographer and all these things would cost you so much more money.
Yeah.
And you're out saying, hey, can you create this content for me? I have contracts that ask me for obviously my post and my shares and whatever, and then an additional 5 images with rights to those images. So now they're paying for rights for those images and then you put guidelines on it, a year, digital rights to reproduction, maybe print rights if they want it. And then now what they can do is anybody who has clicked to their site, they can retarget something like a Facebook or Instagram ad to show up to them that's not coming from the brand, but now is coming from an influencer or someone that they know, or someone that just looks like they could be part of their feed that's now giving a testimonial to that brand and they can retarget those users. So whether you have 1,000 followers or 100,000 followers, quality of your content still needs to be to par so that brands find value in your work.
For sure, for sure, and I think that's a really good point, especially about the retargeting side, because that is usually your cheapest way of converting a customer anyway, right? So it's usually through the retargeting ads that you end up running. I think like the most expensive part is initially like that first outreach, that first ad that you end up getting in front of somebody. But the cheapest, best converting ad typically tends to be the one where there's a retarget, where they've already expressed some interest at some point, and now you're just kind of hitting them back, whether they've expressed interest in you or in the brand or in something that's related to what they're trying to sell. So I mean, that's a really good point. That's a really good point there. So I guess today, I mean, there's got to be like I know you had mentioned that you're focusing and tracking the data pretty aggressively, right? So I mean, all the different stat lines that you threw out, there's a lot of different things to track. I think the thing that most people tend to focus on is that number, right? Is like it's almost like this weird thing where it's like it becomes almost like a worth type thing for some people on this particular space. So how do you balance that? So I mean, you've got 25,000 people now. Is that a number that like do you feel validated by that number? Do you feel like that number is insignificant? It's significant. It needs to be more. It doesn't matter to me. Where are you with that particular number? What does that number mean to you?
So the number, what it means for me, what it may mean for somebody else is different, right? So for me, Instagram is a means for me to communicate with my blog readers. And my blog is my main platform. It's what I pour my time and energy into. Instagram and other social channels are just a second option. It's a second way of, getting not even getting people to my blog, more so communicating with my blog readers. So for me, 25 is a great number. I hope to continue to grow, but I don't have specific, that's actually the one thing that I don't put significant goals behind. I have blog goals, I have traffic goals, but I don't have any goals behind something like Instagram because I know how consumer behavior works. I know how I use it as a consumer.
Yeah,
And we're just at a different point in it, right? People are not as likely to follow new accounts. And so it's more so about just being there and serving the audience that I have and serving them well and doing value-based
yeah,
content that's really just like adding value and not noise to their lives. So Instagram is the one thing that I don't put any metrics behind. As long as we're on an upward trajectory, I think we're good.
fair enough. That's a fair point. I know Instagram had thought about it a little. There was like these like underlying conversations about like removing the number of followers, I think it was, or like removing the number of likes behind a post. Like, would you have been opposed to either one of those things, or are you like, no, I like the way it is. Like, don't fuck with this platform. Like, leave it the way it is.
So they did remove likes earlier in the year. It hasn't rolled out to everybody yet. So it's crazy enough because like my husband's account doesn't have likes, my dog's account doesn't have likes, but mine still does for some reason. And I can still see likes for everybody else, but I don't think removing likes was so I think they came out and said it was like about mental health and like all of
Yeah,
this stuff, but like I disagree. I mean my personal opinion and in kind of the opinion of the industry is that it's more so about consumer behavior, right? Like shifted behavior. So people scroll and stop, but the actual act of like double tapping a picture just isn't as, it's not something we're doing anymore. So to reflect on that, Instagram is only as valuable as the people who spend time on it, right? And people are going to spend time on it if there's new content to consume. If creators are not feeling inspired or excited or are worried about posting things because of the number of likes that it may or may not get, they're less likely to post. People will not have new content, people will not engage in that content. Like it's a big cycle of consumption, and Instagram, like any other platform, is a business. So
yeah,
I think by them removing likes, they were trying to incentivize creators and people, like not just brands but like people, to just
yeah,
post what you want to post like we used to post and
yeah.
not worry about the number of likes, because behavior has changed and people just aren't doing that anymore. So I 100% support it. I wish mine would go away. They won't go away. But even like reporting numbers to brands, it doesn't matter because the majority of the brands that I work with all ask for impression and reach. And those are the two metrics that they are concerned about. Saves are really big. They want to know who's saving content,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
sharing content. But likes is an arbitrary number.
So you don't think there was like a mental health aspect to it that would have factored into that decision that you think was kind of like the right or the wrong thing to do there? So you don't think that like the fact that they obviously we've seen an uptick in people on social media platforms, like obviously like go through it. You're comparing your lives to people's best life constantly, right? So so you don't think that removing the likes has an impact or a relationship to that side of it? Is that a fair statement? Or
I mean, I think that the challenge that you just said is irrelevant of whether or not there's visible likes, right? It says Sabrina and others like this, or Sabrina and 500 others like this. Like
I
that
agree.
doesn't change. You're still comparing people's best lives. I
Yeah.
think the likes mattered more to people who are tracking the likes, which are more so individual people, creators, brands, your Barstool Sports, your memes are, right? Like people who are like, this post didn't do as well, so I'm going to post less of this post. Whereas like Instagram wanted to say, post everything, do what you want. People will either engage with it or don't engage with it, but you're still posting content.
Fair.
So yes, there's a mental health aspect to social media 100%. I just don't think that the removing
That
likes
the
has.
likes is the part of it that directly impacts it. Fair enough. I mean, that's an interesting take. And obviously, you're an influencer, and you've got and like I said, you've got a really big following, and they're obviously a really active followers that are on your current page right now because they're obviously reading your blogs and all that stuff. So I mean, and you use it as a way to decide, I guess, what you're going to post more of, what you're going to post less of. So it's obviously helpful to you and curating content that you think your people want to watch. There is obviously the other side to it, but I mean, there's like mental health experts that can probably speak to it a little bit better than I think maybe anybody else can. So I guess today, how much time do you spend on your blog? How much time do you spend curating content now on your IG page, on your TikTok? Like how much time of your day is now spent towards sort of publishing content on a general day? Because if you are treating it like a business, and I mean, it is a business now. I mean, it's like I said, it's a career, it's a whole thing. So is it, I would imagine it's probably coming out to more than 40 hours a week. I mean, is that a fair statement? Yeah.
100%. I mean, I think what people don't see is that like posting content and creating content is like 15 to 20% of my day. I'm the writer, I'm the editor, I'm the photographer, I'm the accountant, I'm the legal person. I am negotiating
You wearing a lot of
contracts.
hats. Yeah.
I'm literally like writing and editing posts. I'm doing screen sharing. I'm doing calls with people to talk about what their site should look like. I'm just enrolled in a SEO course. And so I'm working on SEO production. I just finished up a Pinterest course that I had spent a lot of money on. And I'm starting to see those numbers with Pinterest increase.
What did you on, I guess let's touch on both of those. So on the Pinterest side, what have you seen so far work for you on Pinterest? And what is your objective with Pinterest? Even if it isn't necessarily like a numbers thing, like what are sort of the metrics that you're looking at on Pinterest, and what are you kind of hoping to achieve from that particular platform right now?
So Pinterest gets a kind of a conflicting reputation because people who don't really use it think that it's a social media site and it's a search engine.
Yeah.
Similar to Google or YouTube, Pinterest is about search and discovery. And so my goal, like everything else, is to drive traffic back to my blog. So Pinterest has been a really big driver for me. Just in the last month, we've hit record numbers. I think a lot of that is due to Pinterest. I think we're at like 1.2 million monthly views on Pinterest, which is, a certain number of that translates back to people who actually click off and like go to the site.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's about that. And then SEO obviously is the same. It's all about driving traffic.
On SEO, are there specific keywords that you're hoping to like show up for? Is that sort of the plan that you're doing on the SEO side? Is that like the objective there?
So that's a little bit complicated because like it's yes and no. So yes, the words that I'm trying to rank for are like lifestyle blogger, Atlanta lifestyle blogger, Atlanta blogger, which are all there and it's great. But because I'm not a niche centric blog, it's really hard to Google likes authority. And so it's really hard to say, oh, if you're looking for hair, go to this blog when there's like haircare.com. And so for
Yeah.
me, more so about particular posts. And it's crazy because I know more than I did a few months ago, but I still know very little about SEO. And I have like that post at the bottom, actually, if you scroll back down,
Uh-huh.
6 nail colors for every skin tone. I updated this post in like redid it and made it, added more images and like kind of like reworked it based on like the principles of SEO that I learned, because this blog post brings me like 10,000 readers a month, because if you type in like gel nail colors or like neutral nail colors, I'm like the first post on Google,
Oh,
or like
very
one
cool.
of the first 2 or 3 posts. And like I knew nothing about it when I, started to write these posts, and when I wrote it, but I'm taking this course so that I can continue to be more intentional with the work that I do. But I have a number of posts that are on the first page of Google for random things. Like I wrote a post about being like 50-50 in a relationship. And that post like delivers me, I think like a third of my traffic evenly comes from direct, which is my email list, my social media, my Instagram, stuff like that. 33% comes from Pinterest and 33% comes from search.
And Pinterest, you just started, so that's I mean, or not just started, but I mean, you're obviously taking that course now to optimize. So that's tremendous growth really quickly on the Pinterest side. So congrats on that.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess that's another little thing that most bloggers probably aren't utilizing nearly enough. Probably, would you say? And there's like a tremendous growth opportunity there. Maybe like the way you found with TikTok also. Pinterest might be another space that I think a lot of people should probably consider exploring,
Yeah.
especially because I think Pinterest especially caters to all of these different topics. Like I think you've kind of hit them all. Maybe I think you're missing like cooking. You know what I mean? That's like another big one I think on Pinterest too,
Yeah.
right?
I do post recipes. It's the second one on there, easy recipes. And so we
Oh,
do
I missed that. Okay, there you go. Okay, great, great, great.
about some pretty cool recipes. But yes, Pinterest has been great. It's a great platform for discovery if you do it right. The crazy thing about Pinterest is that they're always updating their algorithm. So it's actually like you can have I spent, I think, all of January taking this like very in-depth course and developing like what my strategy was going to be. I had pages of like notes. I was like I was in school, like
Yeah.
pages and pages of notes, like reworking my strategy. I'm going to post this many times, I'm going to do this things and these verticals. And then in like February 1st, Pinterest came out with this huge update, and like all of my groups, all of my email lists, like everything was just blowing up, and everyone was like, Pinterest new updates, like, oh, the rules are changed. And I was like, well, damn, like it was months of research just like out the door.
Yeah.
So this new strategy is working, but it's also still very new. So I'm continuing to
So
grow and
can you kind of get into that? Can you get into that? So like how often are you posting on Pinterest? What strategy do you have there to grow your followers on that Pinterest platform?
So for Pinterest, it's a little bit different. Based on my research and the courses that I've taken, posting about 5 to 10 new pins a day is about the max that I'll do. But what I do for myself is that I go back and I have a spreadsheet of my posts for every month. So I post 2 new blog posts every week, and then so Wednesdays and Sundays are new blog posts, and then Fridays are recycled versions of old blog posts. So like that one that you saw. So it's these posts were that original post was written in like 2016. So I'll
Okay.
go back and update it and like make it sound like me and look like me, and kind of be updated. And so every Friday I have an updated post. And so with 3 new blog posts every week, I have a spreadsheet where I go in and I make 5 new pins for that particular post, and I schedule them out randomly. So I'll put them into a schedule, and my first pin will be pinned manually from my page to my Pinterest board. And then I schedule it out via like an automated service called Tailwind. And so every 6 days, it'll go on to another board, and I have about 3 to 5 boards for every topic. So I have 8 topics. I have 3 to 5 boards per topic. So it'll kind of circle itself. So I'll add 5 new posts, and then we'll usually have about 5 or 10 scheduled posts that will go out. So it'll be a total.
Are you only working on your board specifically? Or are you adding other people's boards as well? I think there's like a way you can.
Group boards that I'm a part of, but in the new kind of data and the new algorithms, you need to be very intentional. Like it used to say you could pin between 50 to 100 pins a day. So now with being like 5 to 15, you have to just be very careful about where you're spending it. And obviously, group boards are great, and pinning other people's content is great. But like my goal is to drive traffic back to my blog. So my focus is
Fair
80.
enough. And then, in terms of optimizations, again, going back to Pinterest, how much are you doing paid, and in every pin that you post, how much content are you filling? Are you filling it up with like, are you making it almost like your blogs where you've got tons of keywords, tons of content inside of that particular pin? Or are you kind of restricting the language and kind of keeping it short? Kind of what's the thought there?
I don't do any paid ads on any platforms unless it's in an agreement with a brand. So, for example, a brand might say, "Hey, let's boost this Facebook post, let's boost this pin, let's boost this Instagram post." So, unless I have that, I don't do any paid. Everything's organic. For the first part of your question, the second part of your question, based on my research, you need to be as colloquial as possible. So, you want the pin to be written in a natural language.
Yeah.
Keyword stuffing is not ideal. So Pinterest will kind of mark you as like a spam account if you start putting like, 6 gel nail colors. If you put nail colors, gel nail colors, nail colors, gel nail, hashtag nail colors, like it will read you as spam and you'll get blocked from
Yeah.
like the algorithm. So for
Yeah.
me, a post like that would probably be like 2 to 3 sentences that says, looking for the best gel nail colors. Here's a post with the best neutral nail colors for every skin tone. Find the best gel nail colors in this post.
Yeah. And I've noticed that questions do really well, like on all these platforms. Like starting out with a question is like something that I've seen that like, I don't know, it seems to grab people's attention. It
It's
seems
because it's because that's what you're searching, right? Like you're looking into a search engine and you're typing into Pinterest or Google or YouTube and you're saying, what nail colors, like what are the best gel nail colors?
I mean,
Or
I'm
how
not, yeah,
do
I'm
I,
not Googling that, but like, but yeah, I see what you mean.
okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
So
you're
somebody's
writing, you're typing in how do I boil an egg, not boil an egg, right? So you're typing in how do I whatever. And so having your post, like you could put in boil an egg, but if you are the person that wrote how to boil an egg, you're more likely to hit the top of the list.
No, fair enough. And then I guess to kind of bring this home a little bit, I think one of the last topics that I saw, or one of the topics was like marriage, something marriage on your blog, right? It was like one of like the major topics. So you're obviously married now, and how involved is your husband in taking your photos? Is he like the primary photographer for a lot of the stuff that I see on your Instagram page, and which I'll pull back up again because I feel like I think I'm pretty sure I saw him there too.
Yeah, he's all
In
over
some of
it.
your posts. Yeah, 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 yeah. I think right there, right? Unless it's somebody else, but I think this is your husband. Um, and so is he usually the one kind of doing the photographs, or are you kind of finding ways to take photographs of yourself or recording your own videos, or what's that process like?
I prefer to shoot with him. We obviously it's been years in the making, so we have kind of like a set thing. He knows exactly what I'm looking for. We
Yeah,
can get the shot very quickly. He
yeah,
knows to say, hey, the lighting's not good here, or change this, or this
yeah,
pose is weird.
yeah.
All the content that's with him, my brother-in-law shoots. He's also like just really great and is awesome with with a camera, and he's a really good photographer. He also has a really good eye, so he will say like, you guys look weird, don't do that, like change this.
Yeah,
Can shoot content with him really quickly. So he's, in terms of photography, I'm lucky to have support. I also sometimes pair up with some blogger friends. So like that photo of me in my closet was shot by one of my best girlfriends, Lauren, and she and I will shoot for each other often. So that like that's kind of helpful. But I generally don't pay a photographer. A lot of times my brand contracts require me to have the rights to my images.
okay.
So I make sure that I shoot with my own equipment and that I work with people who are in the family.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's a good way to go. It saves you quite a bit of money too, doing it that way. So that's obviously really smart. Are you using any specific camera right now, or are you using mainly your iPhone?
Oh gosh, no. So for professional, for like branded content and for stuff on my blog, I almost always use my DSLR, which is the Canon 6D, I think, or sorry, the 80D, A80D, and then I use a lens. The lens is what you learn is like the best part of it. The camera can be whatever, but you need to really invest in a lens. So I use the Sigma 50. 35 millimeter. It's a 1.4 35 millimeter.
Okay.
I had 50 millimeter before, which is known as like the pancake lens. It's kind of like people's like starter kit. It's usually available for like $200 or $300. And we used that for a few years. And then I upgraded to the 35 1.4, which was a much more significant investment. I think it was just as expensive as the camera, but that's the one that we've kind of been
And
using.
when did you decide, okay, it's time to like beef up going from the iPhone? Because I'm sure everyone starts off on the iPhone, right? And then at what point do you say, I'm going to transition out?
There wasn't an iPhone when I started.
Right.
The camera wasn't great on the iPhone, even if I had one. So
Yeah.
I had like an old Olympus DSLR that was like $150 that I
Okay.
started with. And so I've kind of upgraded from there. I think I went to like a Canon 2
Yeah.
Ti, or like the Ti, which was like more of like a starter level, but it was like the 2. And then I think from the 2 I went to the 5 was my next upgrade. And then from the 5 I went to the 60D or like the 50D. And
Okay.
from there, I went to the 80D, which is the camera that I have. And then I invested in the lens. So for me, it was very gradual. I think like every maybe like year, like 2 years ish, or like a year and a half ish, I would kind of upgrade my equipment. And so nowadays, like iPhones are so great. Like I shot a post that's going to go live later today. That's about my coffee maker and how I like make my coffee, like my iced lattes at home.
Oh,
Shot
cool.
all of that, which is the lighting was great. My iPhone was great.
Yeah.
So even through
So
like
instead of carrying that clanky camera around, sometimes the iPhone is just quicker, it's more efficient, you know.
100%. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're creating content, like having content created is more important. And I edit everything through Lightroom. And so it's still professionally edited and it's all going to match my branding. And so even if it goes through my phone, it still goes through Lightroom before it hits
Fair
anyone's phone.
enough. Fair enough. I mean, I think we've gotten like a ton of like valuable and from it is like I have like a million more questions, but honestly we should probably save it for some other time. But I think what you've provided is a lot of value. I think one of the things that really stands out to me that really stood out to me was whether you have 1,000 followers or 6,000 followers. Like if you treat it like a business, it'll become a business. And I think that's a really good place to start. And I know that there are I know there's a lot of people that are kind of contemplating this, especially in sort of the same space as you. I know I've got like some nieces and stuff who are like really into like makeup and things like that, you know, and I don't know, I mean, you know, what the hell do I know about that? But it's like, it's obviously a space for them, but it's really cool to see somebody within our, like the Desi community that like is only like 1 to 2 degrees of separation away that's kind of doing it and that's doing a really good job of it and that's got like and that's obviously putting in a ton of time and that's treating it like a business and that started treating it like a business a long time ago for it to then become one. And so I think that's really valuable advice that I think a lot of people can hold on to. The fact that you're doing so much work on TikTok now unexpectedly, right? So sometimes it's like looking for opportunities, and when you don't expect it sometimes things just pop right up and then when they do seize the moment. And then obviously like retraining, and you say you always go back and you kind of rework some of your blogs again to kind of make sure that they're still showing up. So you're obviously going back and still curating old content, which is really valuable, I think, for people to know. And then taking courses to learn new shit. I mean, you'd think that like at this point you're pretty seasoned. What do you need to like? What more do you need to learn about these particular spaces? But I mean, obviously, it's like never ending. So yeah, tons of cool, like tons of really cool takeaways. So I really appreciate you kind of breaking it down and kind of revealing some secrets and kind of telling us some things. And I know it was super valuable. So I really appreciate it and appreciate the time. And hopefully, a lot of our followers and people that end up watching this end up adding to your, subscribing to your blog for sure. Hopefully, following you on TikTok and following you on IG and on Pinterest too. Cool.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm definitely happy to answer any questions. If you think of anything else, feel free to shoot it my way. But I appreciated our conversation. It was really fun chatting with you.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. I'll link to all your stuff below too when I post the video. It'll probably be like a week maybe or something, and then I'll link to all of that stuff then. Cool.
Awesome. Look forward to it.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thanks, Sabrina. All right, you have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.